Okay, good morning, Cleveland, and to anyone else listening, any other part of the world. This is the beginning of Heartbeat in the Brain, and we are going to have a special guest, or we do have a special guest on today's program, Jerry Szoka from the Grid. I don't know if how many listeners remember the Grid, but we're going to talk about the whole story of the rise and fall of the Grid.
And the radio station.
Right. So if you want to introduce yourself.
Jerry Szoka here at WCSB for the first time. Always wanted to check out your studios. I guess you moved from Rhodes Towers.
Much fancier digs now. We moved into the old NPR studios. It's pretty roomy up here. We were a little cramped in the old 10th floor of Rhodes Tower.
You might want to get some heat in the elevator. It's kind of chilly on the way up.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a whole school here, like with little kids. So I don't know why they wouldn't have heat in the elevator when the
freezing
kids use that. Yeah, it's getting cold all year.
I'm over it.
Yeah, we're here now in the studio, and it's
it's a nice studio. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, it's a little lived in now. We've been here a little while. Got a nice view of, well, not downtown, but we can see the east side over there out the window.
Got your turntables here, 1,200 turntables and vinyl. I love it.
All right, 3 turntables, 3 CDs. We can still play cassettes, and they got rid of the VHS player. We can't play VHS movies anymore.
Let me tell you something. When I first started the Grid back in the 90s, we needed a way to play music when the DJ wasn't there. So my partner at the time came up with a very ingenious way of doing that. Instead of reel-to-reels, he had the 10-inch reels, and you could, well, you're probably too young, but you could record on big 10-inch reels and have it go at 3 1/3, 2 1/3, something. Anyway, it was really slow. But the signal-to-noise ratio wasn't very good, and the quality was bad. So what he came up with was, on VHS, you could record audio input on a VHS at a 6-hour time.
Yeah.
So we would just pipe in from our mixer right into a VHS cassette, 6 hours of music, and we just had stacks of those. And that's how we replayed our music when we weren't there. And that's how we played the music on Grid Radio.
You still have some of those VHS
I've got them all.
Oh, wow.
I've got them all, yes. Tons hundreds of them. All the music from that time period and all that stuff. Sure, I have all that.
All right, so let's go back to the very beginning. You said you're an electrician now, so you were an electrician back then, and you had this dream of starting a radio station, or you're just unsatisfied with radio?
I was the radio it's pathetic. It still is. It was better back then. Hello, John Gorman. he back in the day. Radio was decent. There used to be 107, which is the R&B station or whatever. Used to be called Disco 108. And it was great back then. Well, as time went on, radio really went downhill. It really sold out to the advertisers, and you couldn't really hear any good club music. I always wanted to own a nightclub. So as time, I worked pretty much every position in a club all through the years, and in about 1993, I got on a radio station at WRUW over there, back in about 88, 87, 89, somewhere.
What was your show called on RUW?
It was called Beat of the Night. Beat of the Night.
And it was on at night, I guess.
It was, generally, yes. 9 to midnight, Fridays or Saturdays. And we kind of moved around, but it was always around that time slot. And it was all club-style music. I mixed it all on the air live and everything, and all new music, imports, everything. I always told you what it was and everything. And it was really one of the top shows on the station. It brought in, a couple of years, brought in the most money of any of the other shows, which was great. It was really a hit. And I did that for 5 years. Okay, house music was big then, and high energy and all that. And I decided that I wanted to open up a nightclub, and that happened. Well, I couldn't do the radio station anymore because I had a DJ at the nightclub. I'm like, oh God, all right, got to give up the station. So I'm doing the nightclub. This is about 1993. So
you bought a nightclub, or you rented a building and?
It was an existing nightclub that had no business.
Okay.
Because me and a friend remodeled another nightclub. They hired us to do a nightclub. We weren't the owners. He just said, can you come in and make it busy? And we did. We were the DJs and put in a light show. And what it did is it killed the business of this other bar, which was called Detour.
Okay.
All right, it killed that business, and the bar that got busy was called Keys. Okay, so I told, after the bar got busy that we made busy for the owner, he goes, okay, well, I can't afford to pay you what you guys want anymore. I'm like, okay, well, we're out of here. We made your bar busy and we expect to get paid what, for DJ and all. Anyway, so we left, went over to Detour and said, hey, could we buy your bar now that it's dead? Then they sold it to us. We remodeled it, made it busy, called it the Grid, and killed the bar that we just made busy a couple blocks away. Anyway.
Where was this?
It was on West 9th Street, 1281 West 9th. It's now called the Map Room.
Map Room?
Map Room, yeah, pathetic. Anyway, they destroyed the place. So the Grid was the club to go to, dance club. Yeah, I like a dance club. It's focused on dancing and dancing. You bump the table here.
Yeah,
dancing and the music. That's what it's about. Well, since I had the radio bug in me from doing RUW all those years, I'm like, there's still no good music on the air. So I called the FCC and I said, how do I get a license? I want to do a radio show, a radio station. Well, we don't issue licenses to, people just like that. You got to buy one, resisting station or whatever, which are, multi-million dollars.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, let me just write a check. Well, that isn't going to happen. I says, well, what about a small station? There's plenty of room in between the big stations on the dial. Well, back in the 40s or 30s or whatever, when they were making this, first coming out with radio and all that, the equipment that the signal was put out on was not very good as far as locking in it. For 89.3, okay? There's an 89.5, there's an 89.7 on either side. There's an 89.1, and there's a 88.9. Okay, well, 89.3 is your guys' frequency. There's frequencies in between your station and the next one over that if your station isn't locked in at 89.3, it can drift, a couple digits up or down.
Right.
That's the way it happened back in the day. Well, nowadays, it doesn't really do that. It's locked in. 89.3, boom, that's it. You move one digit up, you don't get 89.3, you could get someone else. Mm-hmm. All right? Well, the FCC didn't catch up to the times with the equipment, so they weren't issuing licenses. Well, you could interfere and all this blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I ain't buying it. So what I did, and I haven't really ever said this in public before, was you're not allowed to buy radio equipment in the United States for these this is back then, about 1993 or whatever. You're not allowed to buy the equipment and use it in the United States. It was only made for export. So if you're in Canada or Mexico, you could order transmitting equipment and have it shipped there. Okay, so I did, let me figure this out. So I called a company and said, okay, I want a transmitter and all the equipment that goes with it. And he goes, well, I can sell it to you, but I can't ship it to you. I'm like, okay, how about this? I'll get a hold of someone in Canada, you ship it to them, and I'll have them ship it back to me. And they go, okay, we can do that. So that's what I did. I had it shipped to Canada and shipped back to me, set up my transmitter, and I had people behind the scenes who were in radio. Mm-hmm. That's what they did, but I couldn't use their name, and I still can't use their name because, for whatever reason, they're probably still in the business.
Yeah.
But they said, we support what you're doing.
So where did you set up at? Like the actual transmitter and stuff? I know high spots, you're going to get the best.
On West 9th Street, it was a 5-story building, mm-hmm. so the roof was 6 stories.
Okay.
I set up my antenna up there, which went another story up because I put it on a long pole, put that up there. Transmitter was in the DJ booth. That was connected and wired into the DJ mixer, and boom, we're on the air. Okay, and I chose 96.9 because there was nothing around it. And in fact, I can't say who and all this, but there's a radio equipment manufacturer, at least there was at that point in time in Cleveland, that made equipment for radio stations that made them sound really good, okay? And this piece of equipment was several $1,000s. Even some of the big radio stations did not have this piece of equipment. Well, lo and behold, one of the people working for that company was helping me behind the scenes. The owner of the company caught wind of what I was doing, and he goes, you're not even going to... The guy tells me, who's working there, tells me that the owner of the company tells him, he says, you're not going to believe this, but I used to, back in the 70s, broadcast micro broadcasting on that exact same frequency, 96.9. And I'm like, what? So he tells me, he says, Jerry, you're not going to believe what the owner of the company wants to do. He wants to give you, for your station, one of these pieces of equipment. It's a demo model, but it doesn't matter. It's still as good as any, for your station that make you sound as good as you can ever sound. And he gives me this $5,000 piece of equipment that just, oh my God, the frequency response was wonderful. Nice big lows and nice highs and everything. And boy, did we sound good. So I did that from about, well, anyway, so I went on the FCC, backtracking a little bit. I called the FCC for, we don't give those licenses. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, well, I tried every way I could, and I said, screw it, I'm just going to go on the air and see what happens. Well, there's a group of engineers around that engineer the big stations around. Okay, one engineer might do a couple of the big stations, but a lot of them have their own. Anyway, it's called the Society of Broadcast Engineers, and they're the little watchdogs for the FCC. Okay, in whatever respective town they're in. Well, I was on for, I don't know, months or a year or something, and
well, let's go back to when you first went on the air. Was it just you at the beginning? In the beginning, was it just you on the?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't talk. It was just music.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to hear a babbling DJ, unless you want to tell us what the music is. Mm-hmm. After the song is ended, right. Do not talk over the music, mm-hmm. and let the song play all the way through. And I don't play radio versions. I play the 12-inch extended version of the song. Okay. It's a club song, and that's what or back in the 70s and back then, club music was not played on the radio. Radio music was not played in the clubs. That's why you went out to the clubs. It was wonderful. You heard these great club mixes and you got on the floor and you just had a good time. And you didn't hear it on the radio, which is wonderful. I would have people come up in the booth and say, can you play this song I heard on the radio? I said, no, go out into your car and listen to it. I play club music. So anyway, what was the question? I forgot.
At the beginning, was it just you doing this?
Yeah. It was just me. Piping the music that we played in the grid.
Right, and
over the air.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was just, so whenever, and we had to, many times we'd have to bleep out something, or we couldn't play a song if we were recording it to go out on the air, because, it had swearing or something that was only for a club. You play it on the dance floor and there's,
So you still abided by FCC regulations?
Absolutely. Yeah. I am all for having an FCC license. I tried to get one, and they poo-pooed me. Like, we don't do, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, you know what? Screw you. I tried. I still abided by the rules. I do not want to interfere with anyone anywhere. There's all these planes are going to fall out of the sky and anarchy is going to reign. I mean, Donald Trump is more of an anarchist than I am. So I made sure to follow FCC guidelines, be it with my signal and with my content. All right, and I did. So let me just fast forward a little bit.
Okay.
The FCC finally, they kept sending me notices saying you must cease and desist, which someone from, and I don't know who it is, and I would like to know who it was, eventually turned me into the FCC. I had a couple names, but who knows.
How long did you go before you first started getting notifications?
Oh, about a year.
Okay.
About a year. And we were on for about 4 years.
Okay. Before
the federal judge finally said, hey, my hands are tied here. She was real nice, Kathleen O'Malley. Very nice Sixth Circuit Court judge, and I liked her, and she wasn't biased or anything. She was just matter of fact. Anyway, I was very adamant about making sure I wasn't violating any of the community standard rules that the FCC would lay down or interfering with anyone, and no planes fell out of the sky and all that craziness. So as far as that goes, I was picture perfect. A plus rating, Mm-hmm. In fact, I even heard from someone who worked at one of the, licensed stations, big ones, who got the Arbitron ratings book. You know what Arbitron is, right?
Sure.
He goes, Jerry, you're not even going to believe this. I go, what? You are literally getting Arbitron ratings. I go, what? He goes, yeah, you're like a 2% share. I'm like, oh my God, really? He goes, yeah, people really enjoy this. I'm at the bar one day, sitting at the FCC would show up at the club, and I'd be up in the booth. Well, they didn't know where the booth was. So the bartender and the booth was up on up on a mezzanine, and I could look down to see the bar and who comes in. And these suit and ties walk in one day. I mean, there was more than one day. They walked in several times, but I happened to be there in this one day. And they'd always ask me to leave their card and this, they're talking, this is so and so from the FCC. We need to talk to him. I'm like, please. So I watch them walk in, and they go, was Jerry Szoka here? And the bartender looks up at the booth, and I just, do the ixnay thing. I am not here. They don't know why he's looking up there. And they leave, and I'm sweating bullets up in the booth, because they're threatening me with, $10,000 fine, years in jail, and this and that. We're going to cut your left, what off. I'm like, you know what? Try it, honey. Just go for it, because I'm going to fight you as much as I can, because you're wrong, okay? The airwaves are owned by the public, okay? The FCC's mandate is to regulate the airwaves in the interest of the public. And the National Associations of Broadcasters is not going to like what I'm about to say, but we all know it. Even with television right now, there's 3 minutes of content, and there's 20 minutes of commercials. Okay? That's lopsided. It's still lopsided. That's why terrestrial radio is pathetic. A lot of people listen to their whatever on the radio, or whatever. I can't even think of the things they listen to on the internet, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's lopsided. It should be 3 minutes of commercials and 20 minutes of good content. That's the way it used to be. All right. Well, it's lopsided, and I was one of those people trying to fight that. So next question. I don't know where I'm going. I'm saying so much here.
Right. So how many? Was it just you at the beginning, or did you get other? Were there other DJs coming in there?
I had
after a while.
Well, it wasn't like this. We didn't have DJs coming in, so there was no music. It was, we would record our sets on Friday and Saturdays, and we'd play them during the week. Or Thursday nights, we'd record our sets and play them the week. And after a while, we got a big repertoire of music, and then we just pop them in and play them, and that was it. There was
so you
no
were
talking.
Throwing these parties and recording it onto, I don't know, VHS, or recording it onto
VHS tapes.
Onto VHS tapes, and then throughout the week you'd play.
Yeah, we'd pop them in.
Pop in your parties.
Pop it in. Exactly. Just our Friday night sets. Mm-hmm. And it was great. It was all mixed all the time. Arnold's going to say, this is funny. I'm sitting at the bar. We opened, it was about 4 o'clock. The transmitter we turned on every day at about 4 o'clock when the nightclub opened. Mm-hmm. And the bar would close at about 2:30, 3 in the morning. So it would be from 4 to about 3 in the morning of all this music. And then we'd shut it off, okay? Well, I'm sitting we just opened up, and it's about 4, and this is a gay bar, okay? So it was geared toward, it doesn't matter. It wasn't geared toward anyone. It was just good dance music. The bar happened to be a gay bar. And I'm sitting at the bar with the bartender. No, we just opened up, and this guy pulls up outside on the sidewalk. The doors are open. It's summer, and he looks like ZZ Top, okay, on a Harley. Yeah. Parks, and the thing's all noisy, and he looks like he's ready to slit your throat. He's one of those. Yeah. He kind of looks like that. And he comes in, and he's in all his leathery stuff, and he goes, who's in charge of this radio station here? I sit at the bar, I look at the bartender and me look at each other, and I'm like a little mouse, trying to scurry off, and I'm like, well, I just might as well take whatever's going to come to me, So I go, that would be me, squeak. He's like, well, I just wanted to say about this radio station that whoever's playing, you're the one doing it? I go, yeah. He goes, well, you know what? I just want to tell you that this is a great radio station, and I listen to it all the time. I almost had to go clean myself after that one. I couldn't believe it. We literally had all walks of life listening to the station. Kids, housewives, ZZ Tops, lookalikes, doesn't matter.
How far did how far did the transmitter go?
Let me tell you, since it was downtown and it was on top of a building on West 9th, which was only 6.5, 7 stories, there was nothing west, okay, as far as blocking the signal. It went all the way, I've heard, out to Bay Village, okay? South wasn't too bad. It went to, Independence, 77 in Rockside. Going east was more of a problem. We would get out to maybe sketchy Euclid.
Okay.
Sketchy. And of course, plenty of signal over the lake because we didn't have a directional antenna.
All the fishermen.
Right, yeah.
Going out there on the boats.
Unfortunately, I couldn't afford, the antenna I wanted. It was omnidirectional instead of notched out. You can get antennas that notch out certain areas, and then that energy is directed toward the other areas you want signal to go to. I couldn't afford that. So as far as paying the bill, that was me. I had a partner in the club at the time, just one partner, and I wasn't about to take money from the club to, fund my little pet peeve. That's not fair to the partner. So any money that went into the whole FCC equipment and the fighting, everything, it just came out of my pocket, and it was thousands.
Well, so you initially bought a bunch of equipment.
Yes.
What other costs are there in running a micro radio station?
Well, you've got the transmitter, you've got associated equipment, the antenna, and things to make sure your signal's locked in and sounds good, and little peripheral things. But for the most part, once you make that initial investment, which back then was $4,000 or $5,000, electricity. That's it. Once the equipment is purchased, if you buy decent equipment and it's not breaking down all the time, which fortunately mine wasn't, you have to monitor, like you do here. You have to monitor your equipment, make sure it's, whatever's happening or whatever's not happening is happening, whatever, anyway. And I did that. I had a log sheet. So I had people behind this, because I don't understand all this stuff. I learned over the years. RUW was a good training ground. And then I had people who worked in radio, guiding me and saying, you need to be aware of these things and blah, 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 and monitor and log all your stuff, just like the FCC would run. There's logs you have to keep at this station, I'm sure, for the FCC. I did the same thing, all right? So I wasn't trying to say to the FCC, bah humbug, I don't believe in you. It's quite the opposite. I'm trying to work with you. In fact, I even went to the Society of Broadcast Engineers, the Society of Broadcast Engineers, which is the local group for Cleveland. They have a monthly meeting, which is open to the public. Anybody can go, where they, kibitz about things happening in the radio world and all that kind of stuff and behind the scenes stuff. I even went to one of their meetings. I asked them, can I come and address this Broadcast Engineers of Cleveland as to what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And that I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to be friends with you. I'm trying to be part of this community. It's just that I didn't go to school to learn all the behind the scenes and how to work all this. I just didn't do that. Okay. So anyway, so I went there and I talked for about an hour. I had a typed 20-page, speech that I gave to him, telling him exactly what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. I'm not trying to run from you. I'm trying to work with you. Hopefully, some of you guys will come to me and say, you know what, this is okay, and blah, blah, blah. But most of them couldn't say. Let me tell you something. After I was done, I had, not secretly, but wink, wink, several come up to me and say, you know what, we really respect what you're doing, and more power to you. We can't say publicly, like, hurrah, hurrah, but, keep up the good work. It's a good cause. So there were people working, giving me praise.
And I don't know, in the 90s, were there other micro broadcasters?
There were probably about 5 of us.
In Cleveland? In
Cleveland, yes. Other ones, there were some Spanish stations. I think there was just a religious one maybe, but there were about 4 or 5. And unfortunately, I think I was the only one who was really making sure I wasn't interfering or trying to cause problems on other frequencies, or keeping the content within community standards. And, community standards are arbitrary, depending on what community you're in. But since mine was all music, what could they whine about? You need to... Yeah,
picking up those sirens.
Up those sirens outside on the 4th floor.
Yeah, somehow.
Is the window open?
I don't think so.
So anyway, they got the sheriff's department, where the FCC was going in, raiding these stations, confiscating their equipment and all the associated equipment. So if you have you say you have your own personal laptop in here, and you're bored, and you've got turntables and vinyl and all this stuff, technically they could go in and say, this is all associated equipment. We're confiscating all of this, even though, the records are nothing to do with the actual transmitter. You know, that could be your friend's record you brought in for the day to play. They could take all that stuff instead of just equipment, and then they did. They really did a number.
Did they ever do it to you? Or?
They know, because I was in court with the FCC. I don't know, by God's grace, who knows, found a law firm in Washington, D.C. called the Center for Individual Rights, who decided that my case was noteworthy and worth taking on pro bono to fight the FCC, because they go, you know what, this is a good cause. There's something here. They spent almost $500,000 on me. I mean, it was insane. This guy kept flying to Cleveland, and I'd go to Washington and all these court things, and we had all the community support of different organizations going to court to, support us in front of the judge and the FCC. And so we were battling the FCC. And so
and you were still on the air during the battle? We
were still on the air during the battle. And yeah, the FCC kept threatening me with fines and things. And coincidentally, just last year, I got a fine in the mail from the FCC.
Really?
For $12,000. It just came a year ago. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You are absolutely never going to get $12,000 out of me. In fact, you should be paying me for help bring to the United States the low power FM licensing scheme for everyone to take advantage of. I was one of the people, not the only one, but one of the main ones that was out there, risking my neck of going to jail and having everything taken from me so people could have some alternative radio licensing to, apply for.
So they ended up changing the rules? Or?
Well, here's what happened. We are literally in court, okay? The FCC is on one side. I'm on the other side with my lawyers, and then there's the judge up in her pulpit up there, all right? So the questions are being asked back and forth in front of the judge, and the judge normally just sits there and is quiet, listening to everything. The judge usually doesn't talk unless there's like a objection or any of that kind of stuff. Well, this one time she finally spoke up and goes, okay, well, the question was to the FCC, when was this is 1999, 2000, somewhere in there is the time. The question is asked of the FCC. Two questions. One, have I ever interfered with anyone, anytime, anywhere, with anyone's signal, airplanes, blah, 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 this and that, of any kind of interference, or could break any community standard, anything that you can, get me on? And the FCC, no, he has not interfered. They wouldn't say that my signal was perfect, which we know it was. They wouldn't go that far. But they said, no, he hasn't interfered, meaning I've been within the rules of broadcasting signal and all that. Well, the other main question was, when was this? Our lawyers asked the FCC, when was the last time you actually issued a low-power license to anyone? They hee-haw around like 30 seconds pass, which is eternity when you're sitting in a courtroom. That's forever. It's like putting your hand over a flame. 1 second is eternity, much less 30 seconds, and your hand is on fire. Yeah. So we're sitting in the room waiting, and they're kind of hee-haw and void it and this and that, and they're saying all these other things that aren't answering the question. So the lawyer asks the question again, and they just hee-haw around. Okay, the judge... Finally, all of a sudden, she wakes up. Not that she was sleeping, but, she makes herself known and says, answer the question. When was the last time you issued a low-power license? Since you say you have a low-power licensing scheme already in place, when's the last time you actually issued one? Okay? Now, we're wanting to get low-power licenses issued, around where there's people, metropolitan areas, where most people live. Okay? All right, so they hee-haw around, blah, 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 not really saying when. Well, she asks, you can tell she's getting PO'd right now. She goes, okay, I want to know. You answer the question right now. When was the last time you issued a low power license to anyone? They finally gave it up. They go, it was like 1978 to a Indian reservation in Omaha, 5,000 miles from where anyone lives, about 300 people could hear it. That's when they issued the last one. So they do issue them, and they do have a licensing scheme in place, but they really don't issue them unless you're on an Indian reservation and 20 people can hear it, and it's whatever. So that was the last time they actually issued a license. Which, okay, my point has been made. They really don't have one.
Right.
That's.
These court proceedings were all happening in Cleveland, or?
Yeah. Sixth Circuit Court of Appeal. 6th, 9th, I don't know. Yeah, right here in Cleveland, the Federal Building. Oh yeah. It was a big deal.
So most of the time you were on the air, you were fighting the FCC.
Yes.
You were.
Yes. So, and the FCC is, trying to make a point that I'm an anarchist and, all this craziness, and that I'm defying the law. And I'm like, well, first of all, make the law reasonable. And that would be issuing low power licenses. And secondly, I'm not an anarchist. I provide a community service via music, and then I eventually started on Sunday afternoons the Beat Boys radio show, which I did from 2 to 5, where we actually went on the air and talked. And what we talked about was things going on in the community and what the latest music was. Import. A lot of music isn't released in the States. It was only, you get it on a 12-inch and you import it and whatever, that. And we tell them what it was. And I chose 2 to 5 in the afternoon on a Sunday because, honey, everybody's out partying Saturday night. And people who want to listen to radio, they're not getting up at 9 or 10 in the morning. You know how hard it was for me to get here at 9 o'clock? Look, my crypt does not even open until 11. And if that sun touches me, I burst into flames. So anyway, I decided, nobody's going to get up till noon. So let's do the show from 2 to 5. They're awake, they're vacuuming, they're cleaning the house. That's when they're going to listen to the show. And I was right. And we had tons of listeners. People called in all the time. We had interviews of people. We had Bette Midler's Glam Squad come in. She was in town singing, and they're like, "We heard about your show. We want, so they came on and they gave us backstage passes. We met Bette Midler and all this stuff. And I said, "Well, where's Bette?" She goes, "Well, she's sleeping. She can't get here. She's primping." I'm like, "Okay, honey, we won't have her on." But we would do things like that, just fun stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
How many days a week was the grid?
7 days.
7 days a week.
7 days that transmitter was on every single day.
So you were up there just all the time, popping in VHS tapes.
We had, absolutely. Once in a while, I'd be out driving around and I'd tune in the station and be like dead, nothing, silence. Like the song ended and nobody's there. I'm like, there's dead air. We can't have that, Mm-hmm. But it's whatever. It just happens. Things happen. You get over it. As far as the financing of everything, it came out of my pocket, like I said. No one else had anything to do with it. I didn't want to jeopardize the club. And I called it Grid Radio because, I don't know, I couldn't think of a name. It was called The Grid, the nightclub. I came up with the name. I'm like, well, let's call it Grid Radio. People will know it, So I did.
Did you do, when you started having these legal battles, did you, take donations from listeners like we do here for Radiothon and stuff to keep the station going?
We tried, but I really didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. I didn't think of it. I try and do things on my own, and that's what I did. I have to say no, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
But you had the lawyers working for you pro bono, so it didn't end up costing you an arm and a leg to
turn that off. Yes, I did. Thank God. They came out of nowhere. Well, and I went to Washington because there was a march. A march of about going after the FCC, and I was part of that. And then I don't even remember doing this, but I was on it. Some panel I was in. I was up on the panel of people fighting the FCC in Washington and answering questions to the public and what I'm going through and how other people can do it. let me tell you something that I found out. And I'm not sure if this is 100% true, but I'm pretty sure it is, because I heard this back in the day when they were first coming up with it. That finally the FCC relinquished and came up with a low power FM. It used to be called pirate radio. Okay, well, I'm not a pirate. I was low power radio, so now it's called low power FM, LPFM, low power FM. So they came up with a new licensing scheme for low power radio, and it was thrown out to the public for feedback. Tell us what you think. And there was this time period of, you can input or suggestions on how it should be done and all this. And some of the rules that were put in place. I was afraid, and as were many other people, there's enough religious stations on the air already. We don't need all these religious people going out there and gobbling up all the low power FM licenses, for crying out loud. No, I would have written in no religious programming, none. It's for other things. You guys got enough out there. We don't need any more, okay? Anyway, like the Spanish stations. There's one out there now, 87.3 or something.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's fabulous. I love it. They've gotten a little too top 40. Unfortunately, I don't like that. I can tell. I've noticed it over the several months I've been listening to it. It's like, wait a minute, it's getting very top 40 now. Even though I don't understand a word, I can tell. It's like, come on, people, get back to roots and all this stuff. Right. Anyway. That's what we didn't want low power to be, is just another top 40 station. Other things that were written into the rules is no commercials. Okay, I can't think of the word. What is church?
What's that?
Churches are, you can't have commercials. What is that called? I can't remember. Not commercial.
Commercial free?
I don't know. Anyway, whatever. It doesn't matter. You can't have commercials. You can't sell your license to someone else. It can't be owned by a corporation, a corporation, and then, sublet to someone else. You're the one who is going to be, whoever gets a license, it has to stay with you. And if you give up the license, it goes back to the FCC, and then someone else can get it. Okay. And here's the stickler that I found out, I haven't 100% sure found out, was that, okay, let me just compare this to Rosa Parks just for a moment, if I may. She decided to go to the front of the bus, okay? Fine, great, love you, honey, good. Well, she made a big stink, and everybody now can sit in the front of the bus, but the powers that be said, you know what, honey? Since you made this stink, everyone else can sit in the front of the bus except you. You got to stay in the back. How dare you come up against us? But everyone else is okay. This is what I believe the FCC has done to people like me is, okay, since you made this stink and making us do this with the licensing, the LPFM and all this, and you dare to go up against us and fight us in court and ignore us and all this, that everyone, other people who didn't do this can apply for a license, but you cannot. You are barred from ever having an FCC license.
They barred you?
This is what I've heard. That people, I wasn't the only one, but people who fought the FCC are exempt from getting a license. And what does that say? I should have been right at the front of the line. Yeah. It's like, okay, we have licenses now. Would you like to apply for one? Well, absolutely. I want to get back into radio. I want to do radio, but, I don't think I'm allowed. I mean, I could be on, like, this station, but I can't have my own station, is what I'm saying.
Well, how did they finally get you to shut down?
Well, here's what happened. We're in court, and I've been on for 4 or 5 years now, fighting the FCC and walking on pins and needles. Well, eventually the pins and needles just got dull, and I'm like, you know what, honey, if you're going to go for it, go for it. Just go for it. If you're going to arrest me. But guess what? You're in for a fight. And then that's what it was. So we're in court, and Kathleen O'Malley's up there, and she goes, well, I've heard everything and blah, blah, blah. She goes, my hands are tied. She goes, I am ordering you right now to shut that transmitter off. The FCC has made their case, and you have made your case. And at this point in time, my hands are tied. And I looked at her and I said, you know what, Miss O'Malley? I'm going to do this for one reason. Not simply because you're telling me to turn it off, but to prove that I am not some crazy anarchist out there trying to make planes fall out of the sky and coerce the young people into becoming something they're not and recruiting people. That's not what I'm about, and I've never been about that, and I think everybody knows that. So that is the only reason I'm turning this transmitter off, is to prove that point. And then I shut it off, and it's never been back on since. And yes, I do still have the equipment. And I could turn it back on right now if I wanted. But I haven't.
So you shut down in around 2000?
Yes, somewhere right around there.
And right around that time, I imagine the internet was kind of changing the game, too.
It was. The internet was coming on. I was not streaming on the internet at that point in time. That was a whole new ballpark. I couldn't take on another... Yeah. I couldn't take on another thing.
Yeah,
you know, dealing with the FCC and running a nightclub and coming up with party ideas and all that. You know, I mean, I had the time of my life. Trust me, I would never. I don't regret 1 minute of it. In fact, you know, people are out there having low power radio. The Spanish station in Cleveland, they have a low power licenses thanks to me and others like me.
So they changed the rules so that it was affordable to get.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Yes. And it's like, oh, you know, the FCC. Oh, you know, they didn't say, but they said, oh, you know what? There is room in between the big licensed stations. Mm-hmm. And this is one other thing that the public doesn't really know. Stations such as, and NPR, National Public Radio, was against my fight. I couldn't believe it. I was actually offended that NPR was publicly, and there might have been people behind the scenes that were for it, but publicly they were saying, oh no, this is wrong, and they were fighting it. I'm like, NPR? They should have been right at the forefront.
Yeah.
So I still have a bad taste in my mouth from that, unfortunately, although I do listen to 90.3 frequently because it's, you know, brain food. I do enjoy it. But that's always left a bad taste in my mouth. Well, one of the things that the public doesn't really know is NPR, I'm just going to use this as an example. Well, let's use the one in Kent, the one down in Kent, the other NPR station that's close by.
Yeah.
They have what's called translators or repeater stations, which is basically a low power FM station that, okay, they have their main transmitter and it covers, say, the Kent area. Mm-hmm. Well, if you go further south and that main transmitter doesn't quite get that far, what they have been able to do is they buy another small transmitter, a little 100-watt transmitter or whatever, to rebroadcast their same signal in another area, okay, which is a low power FM station, but it wasn't called that. It was called a translator. Just another word for the same thing, or a repeater station. And they have two transmitters, okay? Well, there was no limit, so they'd buy another one to get further, and then another one. So they have like 4 or 5 of these translators, or LPFM stations, broadcasting the exact same signal. And what it's doing is it's consuming more spectrum on the FM dial, because you can't use the same frequency. Like right. 89.3, you can't have a translator, 100 miles away at 89.3. You'd have it at, 89.1 or something, because they would interfere, and harmonics and all this crazy kind of stuff would interfere.
Do the translators have to be within the signal of the original? Like, does it be
no.
on the, or no? Okay.
No, that's the point.
Oh, okay.
Because their signal, say, stops at 50 miles. Mm-hmm. Well, at that 50-mile point, they put another small transmitter. Well, it's not right at 50, probably about 70s anyway, to rebroadcast the same signal, so more people can hear it, and then another one so more people, and they're consuming space on the dial. So what I thought should be written into the low power FM rules is any station that has translators are going to be required to give up those translators. Yeah. Guess what? If there's somebody in that community who wants a low power FM license, the first ones they should be able to get is one of those translator stations, because you know what? You've already got your main broadcast signal transmitter.
Right.
All right? Now, these other ones are peripherals. They were a bonus, okay? They're like, okay, we'll do this for you until somebody comes along and says, I want to transmit my own content to this community, and you got to give it up. Okay, and that's what I don't know if that was. I don't think it was done. But why should one station be able to have 6 translators consuming Spectrum if somebody else wants Spectrum? Wrong. That's not in the interest of the public. That's the interest of that one station.
You never did you ever use anything to get your signal farther away out of Cleveland? Or?
Couldn't afford it. No, I didn't. Like I said, it went Independence. Out west, it went to Bay Village. I had people calling from Bay Village, say, I'm in Bay Village and I'm getting you. Right. And then Euclid, I had people. I had somebody in Mentor one time. I don't know, the wind was blowing that one day. So, it's...
And did you mostly get good feedback from people in the community that you...
Oh, my God, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a Gay People's Chronicle that was around at the time. We'd read that and tell people what's going on. And there was what was going on in the other nightclubs. I made sure that I didn't, since I owned the station and it was broadcast out of my nightclub, I was very adamant about not showing favoritism on the air that... Come to the grid. We're having this. Do that. Da-da-da. Don't go to this club. I never, ever, ever did that. I didn't want to be lopsided that way and leave a foul taste in the other club's mouth. So I intentionally avoided saying things going on at the grid unless it was in a whole calendar of events that, okay, well, tonight this is happening at the grid. Tonight this is happening over at, Numbers or Visions, or those are the clubs back then, or whatever the club was. This is what's going on. So I didn't,
When did your club go out around the same time as the radio, or did you keep the club going for a while?
The club, the one on West 9th was from like 1994 to 2001. And then the owner of the building, which I was supposed to buy, somehow struck a deal with the person who wanted to buy the building other than myself and sold it out from under me. He had wanted previously, a year or two prior to that, wanted to become a partner in the club. And I'm like, are you nuts? I don't need got one partner, that's enough. And he was silent. He had nothing. He really was gone all the time. And I ran everything. It was great. Because I'm basically an artist, okay? Musically and entertainment-wise, I'm an artist. I don't paint canvas. I'm not that kind of artist. I'm a different kind. Well, you don't tell an artist who paints on canvas how to paint their canvas. Can you imagine telling them how to paint on their... It's not done. That's not how it works. The same as with me. You don't tell me how to run a club. You don't tell me how to throw a party, because I know what I'm doing. It comes to me. It just comes. I don't know where it comes from. It just comes. I know how to do it. Well, anyway, he wanted to become a partner in the club, and I'm like, absolutely not. Well, fast forward a year or two, he buys the building, and he goes, my rent was like $2,000 a month. He jacked it up to $5,000. And I'm like, well, guess what? I'm out of here, USOB. I said, I'm not going to be in business just to line your pockets, and I couldn't afford $5,000 in rent a month. I closed it, found another location, moved over to St. Clair, found it was basically a parking garage. It had nothing in it, and went through all the jumps and hurdles and everything to build a new club from scratch.
How far over on St. Clair?
14th and St. Clair, almost right downtown.
Yeah.
And build it from scratch, 2 levels, and there we go. That was the new club. Had to bring in a couple partners, which I regret.
Right. How long did that one go?
That went from 2000. I was closed from the closing of the original grid to the new grid was about 10 months, less than a year. We hustled. Believe me, I had to get variances and dig under the street for the sprinkler system, which was $50,000. And Jesus Christ. I mean, it was almost $250,000 to build that club. And it's like, Jesus Christ, every penny I had. And my partners in this, I mean, it wasn't all my money, please.
Yeah.
Well, we opened about 10 months later. So about 2002, it was like May or April of 2002, we opened up. And Jane Campbell was the mayor at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember this, a name from my childhood.
Yeah, Jane. She was going to come at the opening day. She didn't show. I'm like, you bitch.
Ribbon cutting. No one got the big scissors.
What a
no
bitch. She never came. It was like, come on, Jane. Of all the, I mean, here I am, a new club, spent all this money downtown, and they're like, well, nobody's doing anything downtown. Well, guess what? I just spent $250,000 hiring all these people, and you don't even come? Well, no wonder you're one term, whatever. One-term mayor. So, yeah. Well, as time went on, and my partners, which were basically bean counters, that's all they were, knew nothing about nightclubs, decided that they knew more how to run a club than I did. And I'm like, you know what? Here they are trying to tell an artist how to paint on a canvas. And I said, this is not going to work. I cannot function with you on my shoulders telling me, well, we need a different DJ here and this and that. I said, you know what? Screw you. And that was it. I was out. I said, I cannot function like this way. You guys run the club. Well, it closed a couple years later. That was it. Without me there and being the life energy and coming up with all the ideas, it didn't work.
So your involvement in anything called The Grid ended around 2002, 2003?
No, 2003, 4.
2003 or 4. So the St. Clair one went for a little while.
Yeah, I was there for about a year and a half. And strong. Yeah, I mean, we had politicians and news people come, and although it was a gay bar, it wasn't a gay bar. It was, if you're cool, you come in. I didn't care what you look like. You could come in your underwear. I don't care. As long as you're fun and this and that, and that's what people did. I didn't care. They'd come in on the dance floor. They'd strip down to their skimpies, and good for you, honey. Have a good time. It was great.
It sounds fun. We're gonna take a quick break to play the station IDs and a couple PSAs, and then if you want, we'll come back and take calls from listeners if anyone wants to call up. We'll
give them a number.
Yeah, 216-687-3515. Somebody's calling already.
Oh my!
We have around a 7-second delay. So
okay.
I don't know how they got me already, but as soon as I said it, somebody started calling.
Hello.
We'll play a couple PSAs and take a few minute break, and then we'll be back.
Good.
All right. Thanks.